So let's take a focused look at the new Emperor's Children launch box and talk about the champions of Slaanesh. Is it looking like a good deal or not for those starting the faction? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking new Emperor's Children once again. And in this one I thought we'd focus on the Champions of Slaanesh launch box, the models inside it, and how the numbers seem to stack up for it on the tabletop. As ever when Games Workshop launches new ranges and new factions, the first thing that's going to be coming for it is the launch box. We had that revealed at the Las Vegas Open previews. Out of the 7 new kits for the Emperor's Children, it basically contains 3 of them, though 2 copies of the Noise Marines and 2 copies of the Troops. Then for the rest of the release wave, it'll be Fulgrim, the Lord Cacophonist, Lucius the Eternal, and the Flawless Blades coming individually later. The release date for this one is still rather uncertain at the moment. We've only just had the Deathcore of Krieg box set, and the roadmap kind of implies that we'd get both the Guard release and the Eldari before this box came out, though I guess we can't be 100% sure of Games Workshop's timeframes. If it had to estimate though, I'd probably guess March as the pre-order date for this sometime. Could be either towards the start or the end of the month and maybe shipping out in April if it's later. And then usually after that there's somewhere between a 4 to 8 week gap between the launch box coming out and then the individual Codex shipping. Though at least hopefully like the Guard box sets, they'll have some interim points and any day one bug patches they need to do sooner rather than later, to avoid the sort of annoying interim period where you have the Codex but you don't have the full official points values for them yet, so everything maybe feels a bit more up in the air. I'm sure there's going to be a massive amount of interest for this one, given that it's basically adding a whole new faction into Warhammer 40k, or at least the major expansion of a sub-faction I suppose. As a result, Games Workshop are almost certainly going to have made quite big numbers of it, similar sort of levels to say the Blood Angels launch box, Croods and Deathcore of Krieg, but it's still maybe a bit uncertain as to whether or not they'll make enough to keep up with demand. It certainly seems like the Deathcore of Krieg in multiple locations around the world sold out very fast, so it's definitely possible that this one could too. Price-wise, it's likely to be £145, $230 or €180, similar to the Blood Angels army set or the Deathcore of Krieg. I guess the only reason that might go up is if they manage to squeeze in another price rise before then. It generally tends to be in the first half of the year, but either way I'd expect a number somewhere around that sort of level. It's definitely a big deal for the Emperor's Children though. They've long been part of the 40k backstory as the Chaos Legion that fell to Slaanesh, and Fulgrim, their Primarch, being kind of notable in his Primarch slaying, killing Ferrus Manus at Isfahan and also putting Rabute Gilliman out of action, even if some Eldari sorcery got him back on his feet. In the 41st millennium, they're horribly twisted in the pursuit of excess and sensation in all its forms, with great use of bionics to take in all the sights and sounds of the battlefield and massive use of sonic weaponry, Fulgrim himself having retreated to a demonic pleasure planet for a long period, though there have been some hints and teasers that he was active again in the 41st millennium, and he very much seems to be now. They've long been one of the fan requests for an army to do in full for Warhammer 40k, and it seems inevitable that they would at some point, given that they've redone all the other 3 deity legions, so it seemed only a matter of time before Fulgrim and Slaanesh things happened. There's definitely been a bunch of people waiting for an Emperor's Children launch, and the first place will be the Champions of Slaanesh box set, and this one seems at least fairly typical for a Warhammer 40k 10th launch box. It had a codex in it with the limited edition cover, the data card set for the unit stat lines and things, and then a whole chunk of new plastic miniatures. It's led by a Lord Exultant. There's 2 sets of these sort of troops box sets that can either be fielded as Tormentors or Infractors, and 2 sets of 6 Noise Marines in their redone way that feels maybe a bit more like Havocs versus rank and file Chaos Marines. With such a big launch box coming for a whole new faction to Warhammer 40k, I thought it would be a good subject for the March channel giveaway, where 8 viewers will get the chance to win one of those, entered in the usual ways on the channel, either via the Patreon page or completely for free via social media. Hopefully should be a good way for a bunch of people to jump into the faction. I'll cycle back to this one at the end of the video for those interested to talk about how to enter if you'd like to. In any case though, focusing on the miniatures actually within the box, first up we've got the Lord Exultant, the HQ leader choice. He feels like he's going to be the generic on-foot Chaos Lord for the Emperor's Children, and the kit really feels like it's got a fair few parallels with the recent Chaos Space Marine Chaos Lord kits that they brought out, basically going for a fairly general purpose faction commander with both a few aesthetics and a few war gear options, so you can equip him with a bunch of different loadouts. As you can see on the left there, it's got the option of a Power Fist and a Phoenix Spear, I think they said it was. The middle one's got a Rupture Lash and a Screamer Pistol, and he's got the head swap there, a sort of mutated fleshy Slaanesh head, as opposed to a helmed one, and the one on the right's equipped with a Power Sword and Plasma Pistol. We had a few other rules hints for him, including getting a rule called Euphoric Strikes, which basically gives him a once per game melee damage boost, and that one does sound very similar to the Chaos Lord's rule or the generic Space Marine Captain's rule, basically charging up and hitting extra hard for a turn. and given that he's seeming like the generic Captain or Lord equivalent, I wouldn't be too surprised if he's one of the ones that reduces the stratagem cost for his unit. In any case, model-wise he does feel very equivalent to that Chaos Lord, so that would mean he's likely to be sold individually at $42, £26 or €34. Then we've got the biggest section of models in the box, which are the Infractors and Tormentors. Quite a lot of Space Marines here with 20 Emperor's Children rank and file on the go. The Infractors are these ones with the dueling sabres and bolt pistols being their main weapon loadout. It looks like the sort of Sergeant Champion option at the back there with the combat stims appears that he can take a power sword, though the rest look like they're just armed with just the one loadout. I think they're pretty fun models, maybe a nice enough blend of Emperor's Children ostentatiousness but also not being too over the top given that they're supposed to be the base troops. The dual build option for them were the Tormentors. They look like they come in box sets of 10, so I guess that you'd be able to field them in units of 5 or 10, similar to Legionaries and things. If so, then that does mean that you could field really quite a lot of small units out of just the launch box set alone. We know that they move 7 inches and are battle line units with OC2. The Tormentor version have the bolt guns and special weapons and things, and they can infiltrate and get the sticky objectives rule. They strike me as the sort of unit that you probably want at least some of due to infiltrate and sticky objectives, but then there's going to be really quite diminishing returns and they aren't going to be your mainline damage dealers. The Infractor rules, on the other hand, will apparently have scout, movement 7 inches, and dueling attacks with precision. Hopefully they'll be at least fairly cheap to field in game, and I think that quite a lot of their value might depend on their special rule, given that cheap precision scouting and marines with probably low AP that can only really handle lighter infantry might not be the most general purpose unit in the world. In any case though, it looks like the box set will give you a generous amount of these troops. And for my guess on their pricing, I suspect they'll be around $62.50, £40 or €51.25. That one's based on the 10-man Primaris Infiltrators and Incursors box set. They feel like quite an equivalent dual build kit. I guess maybe not entirely impossible, they could be a little bit more expensive, say like Khorne Berserkers perhaps, but at least somewhere around this kind of mark. Finally, and for the best known infantry that people were probably most hyped for in the Emperor's Children, given they've got a lot more established backstory, are the Noise Marines, the great big sonic weapon champions of Slaanesh that deafen and blast their foes apart with waves of pure sound, with the excruciating frequencies of their sonic blasters and blastmasters. It looks like there's 2 squads of 6 of these in the big box set. For their rules, it looks like they've been converted from a sort of rank and file Chaos Space Marine equivalent to more like a Havoc equivalent. Their squad size has dropped to the all very holy number of 6, and really quite big chunky models appearing to be on 40mm bases now. And I guess that you probably wouldn't be able to take any more or less than 6, like the new Tank Busters for example. It looks like they'll move 6 inches and have +1 toughness, so maybe a tiny bit sturdier to take out versus the standard Chaos Space Marine, but given that they'll probably have some good damage, I suspect they'll be still fairly fragile for the points cost. Most of the squad take sonic blasters. It looks like 2 can take a blastmaster with the big dual profile, one that can punch through enemy tanks fairly well and one that can shred lighter infantry. They've got a unit leader called the Disharmonist who can take a power sword and screamer pistol, and they all have really quite big notable speaker grills on their backpacks. It doesn't look like they've got any sort of damage profile, but they might key into a special rule up close perhaps. I feel like these guys are probably the biggest selling point of the box really. The most iconic Emperor's Children infantry, even if they have invented a couple more types, and in really quite good numbers here. I certainly wouldn't be too surprised if the standard guys with the sonic blasters have a scarier profile now, if they are being treated a bit more, say like Chaos Havocs with heavy weapons, as opposed to being slightly jumped up bolter equivalents. For these ones, I feel like the pricing is maybe a little bit less certain. It's basically an elite infantry squad, but a squad of 6 of them rather than the usual squads of 5. And for that reason, I'll guess them at the same price as the heavy intercessors for the Space Marines. You do only get a box set of 5 of those, but they were still at the slightly weirdly higher price point than, say, Chaos Space Marine Havocs or Black Templar Sword Brethren, maybe due to being bigger, bulkier models on bigger bases. Feels like, depending on Games Workshop's generosity, they could either be a little bit cheaper than that or even a bit more expensive. I noticed that the Dark Angel's Deathwing Knights were a bit more than the heavy intercessor price. They were $70 or £44, so I don't know if maybe having 6 in the squad might be an excuse to have that kind of numbers for these guys. Either way, if you do want them in good numbers, it does maybe add a bit more draw to this box set, given that they're a prominent feature. Then we've got the paper and rules contents of the book. You get the transfers, but you usually get those in squad box sets anyway. But beyond that, there's the actual rules, which are the Codex Emperor's Children, the one in the box set coming with the classic cover with the old style artwork for them, jazzed up into a new format. They gave us a fair few hints and teasers as to rules in it. Apparently there's going to be 6 detachments, which is all very holy for Slaanesh, but also weirdly high as a number. I guess part of the reason of that is probably to help out demons in some ways. I'd be surprised if we don't get a fairly dedicated demon-centric detachment, and one that's a sort of allied one, where the demons help out the Space Marines and the Space Marines help out the demons in some weird way. For the units, we know we've got 8 unique units, 7 different kits, and the troops can build 2 types as mentioned, a whole bunch of generic Space Marine stuff, and then the Slaanesh Demon units included in the Codex. The standard rank and file Space Marines get to move 7 inches, and the army rule is going to allow them to advance and charge and fall back and charge in some way, though we haven't seen the fine print on it yet. In any case, it's certainly helpful to have the tome in the box set for the new people collecting the faction, handy rules to reference, and unlocking the codes in the app. This will be the mainline Codex cover when it goes fully live though, this one featuring some fairly cool art of a new style Noise Marine unleashing some sonic hell on the enemy. I feel like both the Codex covers are nice enough in their own way. Finally, we have the datasheet cards, £20 or $35, and in general I'd say kind of expensive for what they are in terms of just a fair bit of printed paper. Still though, on the flip side, I think that these are genuinely useful gaming aids, kind of handy enough just to be able to have the units that are actually in your army with the reference cards on the table. And I feel like as small upsells in the box set go, they maybe aren't the worst to have. I expect these ones to likely have the army rule and then just the datasheets. They don't generally have the detachment rules on it, though they'll probably have the combat patrol version of the datasheets as well. Overall, putting that all together, we can have a rough idea for the points in the box and the discounts. Obviously, points are very much not known at the moment, so could vary quite a bit, but in reality, just knowing what 10th edition datasheets generally tend to do and how much they tend to be valued, I'm going to start out with some guesses for these. For the Lord Exultant, I'm going for 85 points, around about the sort of standard Captain to Chaos Lord sort of mark. For the Tormentors, with both Infiltrate, Sticky Objectives and OC2, I feel like they're going to be quite well valued for their utility, maybe at 90 points per 5 perhaps. The Infractors may be a little bit cheaper depending on their special rules and damage profiles. I've gone for the sort of Space Marine Reaver stat line, which it sounds like they have at least some similarities with Scout and Precision, 80 points per 5 of them there. And then for the Noise Marines, I've gone a little bit more than the Chaos Space Marine Havoc style mark, going for 140 points for each unit there, given that there's an extra model in the squad. Obviously all really quite nebulous and a lot of guesswork there, but it seems unlikely it's going to vary too crazily from that, so maybe around about 700 odd points in the box, I'd say with pretty good odds for being somewhere between 600 and 800. Either way, if it's anywhere around that level, it'll be better than some box sets that they've done. That works out at roughly 3 points per dollar, which isn't too bad as 40k goes, particularly with the context of coming with the Codex and data cards. It's significantly more points than the Kroot and the Krieg box sets, and around about the same amount of points as the Blood Angels box set was, so it holds up fairly well on those metrics I guess. I did find it kind of funny as well just for amount of plastic that it comes with more models than the Astra Militarum box set, even if admittedly they did have some bigger models with the Cavalry and the Siege Battery there. Otherwise, for theoretical discount, going by my estimated numbers, unless they surprise us on the pricing, it'll be the same as the other launch box sets, £145, $230 or €185. And going by my estimates of all the things that are coming out alongside it, that'd put the total cost included at around about $390 or £250. That's valuing everything at full price, including the datasheet cards, which not everyone necessarily might do. I'd always bear in mind that these discount box sets aren't quite as valuable as they are on paper if there's just something that you really wouldn't have bought otherwise. In general though, still for the top line figure, it's around about a 42% theoretical discount on paper if you bought all the content separately, though that might be a little bit higher or lower depending on their final prices. In general though, I wouldn't expect it to vary too much from that ballpark figure, and that does look like it's putting it on the sort of upper end of these launch box sets and combat patrols for 10th edition. Quite a lot of their discount deals have wound up being in the sort of 30% to 40% sort of mark, so at least on paper this one looks above average, presuming of course that you did want the balance of kits and the codex that are included within. Overall, between all that, presuming that you actually want to start an Emperor's Children army, otherwise why else would you get the box set, I would say that it looks like a pretty good option on paper, at least as far as Games Workshop discounts go. All the models are new sculpts, and most of them have been generally pretty well received. Individual preferences will vary of course though. The discount does look okay if you want all the contents. It seems a reasonable amount of points in the box set. And for the unit mixes, I feel like going heavy on the Noise Marines isn't exactly the worst thing in the world given that they're so iconic. And the troops ones I feel like are kind of practical ones to get a collection started in a big way. You do get a fair amount of Space Marine models here, and I feel like the draw to the troops box is helped a fair bit more by the dual build option, presuming that you can fill them in 5s, you could have basically 4 units worth of troops, 2 melee ones and 2 bolter ones. Otherwise for new collectors, I feel like the Codex and the datasheet cards are both pretty reasonable pickups for new players starting a new faction in the game. They both seem like purchases that can be handy enough, particularly if you can get them at discount like this. If you were starting Emperor's Children, I guess 4 potential downsides of the box set, maybe only having 3 out of the 7 kits available to the faction was one of the bigger weaknesses. It might not have been the worst to swap out one of the kits for some flawless blades, rather than doubling up on 2 copies of both. There is some overlap with the Combat Patrol box set that's coming, which is basically a Lord Exultant, one of the Infractors / Tormentors, and then 2 sets of 3 Flawless Blades. But on the other hand, I feel like it's actually not really the worst overlap in the world if you did want to pick up both. You would be going a bit heavy on the troops, but at least you get 2 units of the Blade Elites, and besides characters and Fulgrim, that would be a very well-rounded, fairly heavy Space Marine army. So although I'm sure some people might prefer the Combat Patrol as the entry point, I guess other downsides are if you didn't really want to pick up the datasheet cards, which might lessen the amount of theoretical discount there is, or if you prefer the look of the solo selling Codex. Plus, for the people who really want to go into the faction really big, it doesn't really feel like the most optimal box to buy 2 of. You'd be going very, very heavy on the troops choices there, and you'd have more Noise Marines than you could field in one army, at least presuming that they're locked to squad size of 6 and you can't take more than 3 sets of them. I feel like it does just seem to work better as a single purchase versus a double one. I still think there could be enough value if you're willing to resell a bunch of stuff. In any case, overall, despite a few nitpicks, I think for a Games Workshop launch box discount set, this one's better than most, and given a bunch of people wanting to jump into a new faction, I'm sure it'll be really quite popular. Let me know what you think of the box set though. Would you be tempted to pick this up or not? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. As mentioned, I'll just finish up by cycling back to the channel giveaway, which will be the March one for 8 copies of this box set, given out to channel viewers. We've already covered what's in it pretty extensively in this video. The Lord Exultant, 12 Noise Marines and 20 Tormentors / Infractors, plus the new Codex and datasheet cards. For the channel giveaways, as always, there's 2 equal ways to enter, both of them linked down below in the video description links. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount. That's the primary thing that supports the YouTube channel and allows me to keep on making these videos each month. Anyone who's an active backer there will get automatic entry into the monthly prize giveaways, with similar ones to this coming out each month. Otherwise though, there's also the equal option to enter completely for free, and that one's via supporting the channel via boosting the algorithms. To do that, you subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Facebook page, and then to actually enter the draw, a giveaway post appears on the first of the month. The next one will be for nights, but this one will be the March one. That appears at midnight UK time and is then active for 24 hours. If you want to enter for it, then respond to that giveaway post with a picture of any 40k mini or imagery, along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo. That bit is just to make sure that the prizes go to real people and not Facebook bots or spammers. Then after the 24 hours is up, I put all the entries into a random number generator, no more than 1 entry per person, and I pick out the 8 winners, and they'll be announced on the channel update video on the 4th of March, as well as being contacted individually. The big box sets will be posted once I've received my orders of them. Hopefully that should be sometime in March as mentioned, though we don't know the final release date for this one yet. In any case, there'll be further giveaways each and every month. At the moment there's still time to enter for the big night household one that'll be the February one. That one's all the similar rules, but instead the prizes are for 4 copies of a custom knight household for any 3 plastic Titanic, Imperial or Chaos Knights, swapping out them for armigers as you'd like. In any case, feel free to check out the links in the video description if you'd like to enter for either of those. In any case, look forward to hearing all your thoughts on the big launch box. Would you be tempted to pick one of these up or not? Let me know whether or not you'll be looking to try and get a set if it is for the expected pricing. I'll certainly aim to keep up with the Emperor's Children news as Games Workshop gives us new reveals and teasers though, so feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more. I'm sure Games Workshop will keep a few things coming to ramp up the hype. Hopefully we'll get a few rules teasers at some stage. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, as mentioned, feel free to check out the Patreon page if you'd like to support. Channel patrons get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.